So we are welcoming our mystic for today. His name is Rabindranath Tagore, and he is a literary genius, a poet, a scholar, and a spiritual seeker, just like you and I. And he lived a couple of decades ago in the West Bengal area of India. And I have enjoyed his poetry and his insightful way of perceiving existence for a while. So I figured, let me share him with you today. All right, let's dive in. Here's his poem. It's called Sing in My Heart. I had traveled all day and was tired. Then I bowed my head towards your royal abode, still far away. The night deepened. A longing burned in my heart. Whatever the words I sang, pain cried through them. For even my songs thirsted. O my lover, my beloved, my best in all the world. When time seemed lost in darkness, your hand dropped its scepter to take up the lute and strike the innermost chords. And my heart sang out, O my lover, my beloved, my best in all the world. Ah, who is this whose arms enfold me? Whatever I have to leave, let me leave. And whatever I have to bear, let me bear. Only let me walk with you, O my lover, my beloved, my best in all the world. Descend a while from your audience hall. Come down amid joys and sorrows. Hide in all forms and delight in love and in my heart. There sing your songs, O my lover, my beloved, my best in all the world. You've been through that moment in life already, haven't you? Where you felt tired. You know, this journey of life is so exquisite. It is quite entertaining, but also brings with it its share of challenges. And it's only through challenges that we get to be closer, that we get to call out to that beloved. So I often say this life is really a game of hide and seek. But in this play, when we can't find meaning, when we can't find purpose in the trials and the tribulations, we get exhausted. And from what I'm noticing, that moment of exhaustion is arriving in people younger and younger. You know, I see some kids at 8 years old or in the teenage years where they feel so apathetic towards life. It's almost like they're exhausted from life already, and they can't find any real meaning or purpose to existence. And that is the only moment when our head somehow finds something to bow to, or it maybe seeks something to bow to. So what is it that you have found that your head bows to? And for each one of us, that can look different. We can name it by different names. What do you bow your head to? Is it nature? Is it in meditation? Is it to your heart? Is it to the joy that you find being with your children? Is it in the pursuit of your passion, your soul's desire, your dharma? What do you bow your head to? So I'm going to pause a moment and let you think about that. Where does my head bow? Because each one of us must have a place, must have something where our head bows. Without that bowing, the seeking cannot be healed. Thirst cannot be quenched. Where does your head bow to? Who does it bow to? In the olden times, we would create these traditions of bowing our heads to our elders, right? We would go to church or mosques or temples, and we would bow our heads to the deities or the gods, however we perceive them. But for us in today's world, most of us don't really follow any traditional pathway of worship. We must find and realize, where is it that my heart wants to bow? Because if we don't have that, then we are lost. And I find that is one of the bigger reasons why there's so much mental illness in the world today. That feeling of being lost, that level of anxiety, that sensation of depression, because there's nothing and nowhere that our head bows. But I also find that once somebody finds that place to bow, ease begins to settle in. And so he says, the night deepened. A longing burned in my heart. So if you've resisted that bowing, you will find that night will deepen until you start to find answers in your challenges, until you start to find a level of joyful pursuit in the suffering that you're experiencing, in the crisis that you might be experiencing in your life. Until that happens, the night that we feel continues to deepen. And in the depth of that darkness is when the heart calls out. And I find that it's only when that piercing voice comes out, that arises out of our heart in the midst of the darkness, that real prayer ever happens. Like that depth is what reaches the heavens, that heavenly royal abode that he's talking about, that exists within us. But that's when real prayer, spontaneous prayer happens. But whatever words I sang, pain cried through them. And we have to allow ourselves to feel that pain that we are experiencing and not numb that pain. Don't hide away from that pain, because it is the pain, it's the sharpness of that pain that pierces through the chakra system, the energetic system, and opens up that space, that royal abode that he talks about. I can equate that to the yogic perspective of the chakra system within the body. And the crown chakra, the 10th gate, is the space where our royalty exists, where we get to experience ourselves as the wholeness, as a source creator. But it is, like I said, that pain that has to arise from the depth of our navel and pierce our heart, and then go straight to the crown and ask for help. And reach out and grab that source and bring it back to our heart. For even my songs thirsted. And I am in awe of everyone in this world at the present time who is acknowledging their thirst. We might not know what that thirst is for, but at least begin to acknowledge that deep thirst that you're experiencing. And know that there are many people on this planet right now, just like you, where we don't know what we are looking for, but we are looking for something. When time seemed lost in darkness, your hand dropped its scepter. For those of you who find this word really old and maybe don't know what it means, it's like, when a royal entity sits with that staff that represents its status and its loftiness. That's called a scepter. So when time seemed lost in darkness, where both the past and the future disappeared for you, nothing held any meaning any longer, your hand dropped its scepter to take up the lute and strike the innermost chords. So this beautiful metaphor is a representative of where we reside within our own system. There's a vast difference between the imprisoned piece of us, which is the first three chakras, right? They're dealing with survival, constant survival problems, constant need for approval, validation, needing to find a place where we fit in, and then our need to find some sense of power in this world. So between these first three chakras and the jump to that place where we feel the royalty of our own divinity, there's a huge gap. And so within us, it feels like something that God or source intelligence like just sits on its throne, on its royal throne with a scepter and just watches over us, right? But he says that in that moment when that song just pierced the veil, that prayer reached the source, all of a sudden that staff of divinity just drops it and descends within us to play this lute. Like this body is an instrument, it's a musical instrument, and it begins to stir the innermost chords, and a song begins to arise from within us. And that's when we feel the most paradoxical experience of feeling bliss right in the midst of darkness, just feeling the presence of that source in the midst of the most hopeless situation. So that space is the space where your sense of smallness, your lowliness that we feel in our everyday world, and your sense of royalty that also exists within you, both of them come into union. And from the yogic perspective, we call that yoga. That is the goal of yoga. That is the goal of meditation. That is the goal of every spiritual tool or pathway. And then we feel those arms enfold us, surrounding us. Again, very hard to describe to someone else. But you know that now that you have felt the presence of that someone, that something, where you were so utterly alone, even though you might be surrounded by 7 billion people on this planet, but you feel so utterly alone. And then in the midst of the darkness, you feel the presence, arms supporting you, holding you, comforting you, hugging you. That is the only time you are willing to give up your egoic self. You're willing to give up the comforts that your ego so strongly insists upon. And you say, whatever I have to leave, let me leave. I'm willing to leave all of this, every pursuit, every achievement that I've had, every piece of identification that I've created, every relationship that I hold precious. I'm willing to leave all that for this one moment of being with you in your presence. Again, remember that your is just your own higher royalty, your divinity. Whatever I have to bear, let me bear. And an amazing, just astonishing sense of courage just arises within us and say, whatever I have to deal with, if this is what it takes to be in your presence, then let me bear it. I'm happily going to bear it. So no amount of sacrifice feels large enough. You are so willing to swim through shark-infested waters because that bliss, that moment of bliss, that moment of union is unlike any other relationship that you have felt. The peace that just arises from within you is unlike anything you have experienced. That gratification, that satisfaction, and you realize that that's what you have been chasing all along. That's what you wanted. That's what you were seeking. And you got it in that moment. So in that moment, that bowing happens naturally. And like, whatever it takes, whatever you want me to experience, I'm here to experience. So whatever I have to leave, let me leave. Whatever I have to bear, let me bear. Only let me walk with you my lover, my beloved, my best in all the world. Descend a while from your audience hall. Come down amid joys and sorrows. This representation of God or universe we've created, like it exists somewhere up here. Isn't that interesting? It's always up here. Like innately we know that crown chakra, right? The 10th gate. Something's up here and we are down here. So we can exist in any of these chakras. Our consciousness can reside at any of these chakras and it can make its abode, it can make its home. So when we are in our lower chakras, when we feel stuck, when we feel entangled, when we feel imprisoned by the everyday, just mundaneness and the need, we have to do what we have to do to exist. But we feel like we are tied in the mundane. And we feel this divinity within us is just sitting up there in its lofty audience hall. So calling it out, forming a relationship with it is what I like to call sadhana, a morning meditative practice, where you call on it to step away from its lofty audience hall where it's watching you all the time. And say, come amidst the joys and the sorrows of my life, my existence. Come participate in that. Hide in all of the forms that I encounter and delight in the love and in my heart. Delight in my heart. Come reside here in my heart. There, sing your songs. My lover, my beloved, my best in all the world. So in this process of letting your mind drop into the wholeness or the peace that exists for all of us, not just for a few of us. This is across the board a human possibility. But you have to allow that possibility. It cannot be forced. Keep that door open for allowing this union, for you giving yourself permission to calling out to that royal self that exists within you in the depth of darkness, in the depth of no solutions, in the depth of entanglement, and watch the magic that gets created. Because that calling, that song that comes through you is pure. It is unadulterated. It comes straight from the source that exists within your own navel. So thank you all for joining me today.